Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha, and once again it is time for the Monday Q&As. So let's get to that first question. Are refeeds above 10% body fat on a 10% deficit not low carb? I think you're asking are they going to be beneficial or necessary? And I would say probably not. You've got to remember when you're refeeding, you're trying to do several things. You are trying to replenish muscle glycogen, particularly if carbs have been low, for performance reasons, so that you can continue to train hard, because hard training will help preserve muscle better. Number two is to affect things like leptin levels, or to affect things like T4 to T3 conversion, to keep your metabolism just a hair higher. And the fact of the matter is, you're simply not in a large enough deficit at 10%, particularly not on low carb, for these things to be real issues. It's not something I would worry about. Now, if you want to have an occasional day where you just eat at maintenance, by all means go ahead. It's not going to affect you, but it would seem that someone only at a 10% deficit... Sorry, the cats are down there playing. What are you two doing? Okay, let me get back to what I was saying. Sorry about that. But yeah, you're simply not in a low enough deficit to really benefit from it. I wouldn't do it. It would possibly be counterproductive at that point. If you're running a larger deficit, you're getting into 500, 600 calorie deficits or larger. Yeah, refeeds can be beneficial, but certainly not at a 10% deficit with moderate carbs. Okay, next question. Another YouTuber noted that in order to gain the maximum anabolic effect from food, you must consume 30 to 40 grams of protein and 30 grams of carb each meal. How long should they be spaced out? All right. Some of this gets ridiculous, guys. Yeah, meal timing does matter to a very, very small extent. But when you start talking about manipulating meal timing, you're talking about very, very small changes in anabolic effect. Now, obviously, it isn't wise or intelligent to eat only one meal a day. It's going to inhibit your gains. It's probably not ideal for you in preserving lean muscle mass on a cut. And I would say an optimal amount is going to be somewhere closer to 3 meals, roughly. But the meal timing and the content of individual meals like this is going to be so small in the grand scheme of things. We're talking about maybe a 1% difference. Or in some cases, if you're training a couple times a day and you're doing mixed type training where you're doing cardio and lifting in the same day, yes, timing things like carbs can become important. But for the general lifter, you're never going to see a difference. Meal timing really becomes relevant when you're at that cutting edge as a very, very serious competitive athlete, because it could make the difference between first and second place. It could make the difference between an extra $1 million on your contract and performance. But when you're talking about, for general purposes of just people who compete at the amateur level in sports, who only compete in one sport, don't do mixed training, people who just want to look good, gain muscle, lose fat, manipulating meal timing is really wasted effort. You're not going to see a dramatic difference. Just try to eat somewhere between 2 and 4 meals a day, spaced whenever you want them, and you'll probably be fine. This sort of stuff is nonsense. It is not useful for the majority of you. And I'm not even sure where this person came up with these specific numbers. In fact, I wouldn't gain shit from muscle on 30 grams of carb in each meal, even if I ate 6 or 7 meals a day. So I don't even know what they're on about. All right, next question. Myofibrillar versus sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. What is your opinion on the subject, and how could you adjust your training to stimulate both things? Okay, guys, some of my subscribers, my long-term subscribers, are going to get really mad that I'm answering this one again, because this is approximately the 8th time I have answered this in a Q&A. I've done individual videos on this more than once. The idea that you can train for different ratios of sarcoplasmic versus myofibrillar growth, which is, for those who don't understand, go look it up. I don't want to explain all of it right now. It's more than I care to get into. Is hypothetical. It is a purely hypothetical model that has been postulated, that has never been supported by data. There is no data that has been found yet showing that we have found a way to take one person and change the amount of sarcoplasmic versus myofibrillar growth in that one person. There seems to be slight differences genetically from person to person, But you can't change that. It is purely genetic, and all types of training that stimulate growth seem to stimulate, from what we can tell, the same ratios in any given person. You can't differentiate that. So it's really silly, and I know it's really popular because of a few books, and I know there's some experts who've included it in their books, like Mark Ripto and others, but it's really bro science. There's no data supporting this, of which I am aware. And the overwhelming amount of data suggests that you can't train for one versus the other differently. So I really wouldn't worry about it, and I apologize to people who've heard me answer this question multiple times. I know I sound like a broken record there, guys. All right, guys, so that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 2.